Shiki is a troubled and angry teenager, just one bad day away from unloading his frustrations on his entire class. Unsurprisingly, he gets expelled from school for his behavior, mainly because he kept threatening to use his classmates for target practice. Though he pretends not to care about the expulsion, deep down, he knows his life is going nowhere. He figures he'll probably end up flipping burgers at Mickey D's for the rest of his life. Moments later, Shiki's father storms into the room and smacks him on the head after receiving the expulsion letter. Outraged, he tries to hit Shiki again, but this time, Shiki anticipates the move and dodges, jumping onto his bed. His father calms down slightly but still demands an explanation, not only about the expulsion, but also about how Shiki managed to collect the guns stashed in his room, since that kind of arsenal isn't easy or legal to acquire. He warns Shiki to straighten up before he ruins his life. This strikes a nerve. Shiki snaps back, shouting that he's glad they aren't related by blood, because he'd never want to end up like his father. That deeply hurts his father, and though Shiki realizes he went too far, neither of them gets the chance to apologize as the phone in the liquor store downstairs rings. His father goes to answer it and is surprised to get a large beer order. Since business has been slow, he's happy to oblige and heads out in his car to make the delivery. Once Shiki sees his father leave, he picks up a gun for target practice and mutters about how he wishes things had turned out differently. Suddenly, he hears a loud crash outside his room. Before he can react, he's dragged onto the street by a rope of black mist. Disoriented, Shiki sees a man named Sameter walking out of the smoke, and he seems to know exactly who Shiki is. Just then, a car slams into Sameter, pinning him to a wall. Shiki's father shouts at him to get in the car immediately, and without hesitation, Shiki jumps in. As they drive away, Shiki starts bombarding his father with questions. Who was that man? Why was he attacked? And how did his father manage to hit someone so calmly with his car? His father explains that someone like Sameter wouldn't die from just being run over. Still confused, Shiki demands answers. His father decides it's time to reveal the truth. Shiki is a descendant of the Oni, while Samidare is a descendant of the Momotaro, which is why he's hunting Shiki. Before he can explain further, the black mist begins surrounding their car, causing it to malfunction. Forced to drive into an abandoned factory, they escape on foot. But before long, the black mist engulfs their car and it explodes in flames. In the chaos, Shiki's father loses sight of him for a moment, and in that instant, Sameter kidnaps Shiki, binding him in the air with black mist. When Shiki demands to know why he's being attacked, Sameter coldly responds that anyone with Oni blood is a pest that must be exterminated. Just as Samidare prepares to kill Shiki, his father intervenes. He explains that the legends of the Momotaro and the Oni are real and that their war has been ongoing for millennia. Across generations, the Momotaro Agency was formed by the descendants of Momotaro to exterminate the Oni. Though Shiki is still confused, his father tells him to stay back while he handles Sameter. As the fight begins, Sameter manifests two swords from the black mist and attacks with incredible speed. Shiki's father counters with his own mist blade, revealing his familiarity with the technique. The black mist is a unique power possessed only by the descendants of Momotaro. Here comes a shocking revelation. Shiki's father was once a member of the Momotaro Agency himself. His real name was Tsuyoshi Momo, and he used to work alongside Sameter. He abandoned that life to raise Shiki away from the agency's eyes, but he couldn't hide forever. Sameter asks if Tsuyoshi has forgotten how dangerous Oni can be, but Tsuyoshi refuses to engage in that argument. He only wants to protect his son. Despite putting up a good fight, Tsuyoshi is eventually wounded, his chest cut open, leaving him unconscious. Horrified, Shiki yells at Samidare for hurting his father, prompting Sameter to turn his attention back to Shiki to finish him off. But with the last of his strength, Tsuyoshi grabs Sameter's leg, asking why he would go so far to kill an innocent child. He declares that a father doesn't need a reason to protect his son. Shiki might have Oni blood and be a poor student, but he has never hurt anyone. Tsuyoshi words strike a nerve with Sameter, who begins to feel the weight of his regrets, but he refuses to listen further. He prepares to finish off Tsuyoshi, while Shiki watches helplessly. Overwhelmed by rage and hatred, Shiki's body begins to bleed from every orifice. When Sameter looks back, Shiki is no longer there. Suddenly, Sameter hears the sound of multiple guns cocking near his head. Startled, he instinctively jumps back, narrowly avoiding an attack, but he still has no idea where Shiki is. Just then, Sameter notices a drop of blood hit the floor. He looks up and finds an awakened Shiki clinging to the ceiling. Sameter is stunned that Shiki not only awakened his Oni powers, but also managed to control his blood so quickly. What makes the Oni truly terrifying, however, is their utter lack of humanity, making them brutally relentless. Sameter prepares his sword, bracing for Shiki's next move. But as Shiki starts firing blood missiles at him, Sameter realizes the situation is getting out of hand. He opts to flee, escaping the blast radius. But the battle isn't over yet. Emerging from the smoke, Shiki lands a devastating kick that sends Sameter crashing into rubble, leaving him barely conscious. Standing over him, Shiki unleashes his entire arsenal of weapons, destroying the warehouse in a violent barrage. Miraculously, Sameter survives, but before he can recover, Shiki suddenly reverts back to his human form. Confused, Shiki wonders why he's covered in blood, a natural reaction considering the carnage. Seeing this, Sameter prepares to strike, eager to finish Shiki before he transforms again. He charges, muttering that all Oni must be exterminated, no exceptions. Shiki, unable to transform at will, is completely vulnerable. As Sameter's blade is about to land, Tsuyoshi, Shiki's father, throws himself between them, taking the fatal blow. Sameter is shocked that Tsuyoshi would go so far to protect an Oni, but Tsuyoshi, recalling the precious memories spent with Shiki, doesn't mind dying if it means protecting his son. Exhausted by the prolonged fight and mindful that the destruction is attracting attention, Sameter withdraws, melting away into a cloud of black mist. The Mamatero agency must remain hidden after all. Once Sameter is gone, Tsuyoshi collapses in Shiki's arms. Panicked, Shiki says he'll call an ambulance, but Tsuyoshi admits that no hospital can save him now. His time is nearly up. He wants to speak with Shiki one last time. First, he apologizes for keeping the truth from Shiki, but says it wasn't an easy topic to bring up. Knowing he won't be around much longer, he urges Shiki to become stronger, to surpass both the Mamatero and the Oni, so he can live a truly free life. Shiki, on the verge of tears, yells at his father to stop talking like he's already dead. Determined, he lifts Tsuyoshi to carry him to a hospital. Seeing Shiki's concern brings a smile to Tsuyoshi's face, but his injuries are too severe. After only a few steps, Tsuyoshi's body gives out and he collapses. Shiki desperately begs his father to get up, regretting that he never apologized for the hurtful things he said that morning, but it's already too late. Tsuyoshi has passed away. As Shiki sits weeping over his father's body, someone suddenly approaches from behind, saying Shiki can't stay there because witnesses are approaching. Startled, Shiki tries to prepare for another fight, but before he can even turn around, he's struck in the neck and knocked out instantly. It takes considerable skill to sneak up on someone while wearing roller skates, but this stranger clearly outmatched Shiki. Meanwhile, the leaders of the Mamatero agency are in an uproar upon hearing about Sameter's failure to eliminate Shiki. Some wonder if Sameter has grown weaker, but given the situation, they can't fault his decision to withdraw. The agency's existence must remain secret. Regardless, they insist Shiki must be killed before the public learns about the Oni. However, that plan just became more difficult. After being knocked out, Shiki was taken to a remote island, far away from the public eye. The idea is to enroll him in a school full of half-Oni like himself, where he can properly train his abilities. Before that, though, Midano Naido, the man who captured Shiki, needs to evaluate him to see if he's worth recruiting. When Shiki wakes up, he finds himself shirtless and tied to a chair. Strangely, the man behind him is doing push-ups on an umbrella, a bizarre sight, but not the strangest thing Shiki has seen recently. The man introduces himself as Naido, and now that Shiki is awake, he begins explaining the situation. First, Naido reveals his horns, proving that he too is an Oni. He tells Shiki he was brought here for two reasons: evaluation and retrieval. As Shiki already knows, the Mamatero agency hunts down Oni using their black mist. The man who killed his father, Sameter, was one of them. To fight back, the Oni agency was formed, and Naido's job is to find newly awakened Oni like Shiki and assess if they're fit to join. Once the briefing ends, Naido unties Shiki's mouth so he can speak. As soon as he's able, Shiki starts yelling, demanding to know what they've done with his father's body. Annoyed by the shouting, Naido deducts points from the evaluation and assures Shiki that his father's body is safely stored in the facility. But he's dead, so it doesn't matter much. Shiki struggles violently, trying to break free. But this behavior is precisely why Naido tied him up in the first place. Seeing his anger isn't helping, Shiki calms himself and politely asks Naido to release him, explaining that he has a score to settle with the man who killed his father. Despite Shiki's calm words, his face is still contorted with rage, so Naido refuses. He knows Shiki wouldn't stand a chance against the Mamoru agent yet, but since Shiki is so eager to throw himself into battle, Naido decides there's a better way to evaluate his potential. Naido takes off his tie, and before Shiki can react, he sneaks up behind him and begins strangling him with it. This is all part of Naido's test. Shiki must figure out how to escape, or he dies. Either outcome doesn't bother Naido in the slightest. Refusing to die at the hands of some roller skating jerk, Shiki struggles violently, to the point where blood starts pooling around his eyes. Unfortunately, he can't break free in time and eventually passes out. Naido is fully prepared to keep strangling him until he's dead, but just then, Shiki's subconscious kicks in and he enters berserker mode. The blood on the floor forms spikes that nearly impale Naido, forcing him to back away. The moment Naido looks away, he hears the click of a machine gun aimed at his head. Shiki has manifested it and opens fire without hesitation. When the dust settles, however, Naido is completely unharmed. He shielded himself with his blood umbrella, a technique born from his blood manipulation. Seeing that Shiki hasn't learned to control his blood powers and only fights while berserk, Naido decides this could be a teachable moment. He plans to subdue Shiki as gently as possible. When Shiki regains consciousness, his arm is drenched in blood and Naido stands over him. Shiki has no idea what just happened. As expected, Naido explains that when an Oni goes berserk, they lose all sense of self and destroy everything around them, hence why the room is now a wreck. Since Shiki still looks confused, Naido assumes he must be an idiot. To clarify, he bluntly tells Shiki that he's graceless and clueless about blood control. Declaring Shiki disqualified, Naido's words leave him frustrated and angry. Yet, even in his frustration, Shiki realizes that Naido is overwhelmingly strong. He knows he can't beat him, but if he wants revenge on the Mamoru agency, he needs help. So he swallows his pride and bows, begging Naido to take him as a student. Naido immediately rejects the request. In battle, fighting without thinking is suicide, and since Shiki mindlessly went berserk, he's deemed unfit. Unable to control his blood and acting purely on emotion, Shiki is, in Naido's words, useless. Since Shiki failed the evaluation, Naido declares that he'll have to kill him to prevent a rogue berserker from running free. Shocked but aware that Naido isn't bluffing, Shiki bolts, trying to escape. But as Naido prepares his blood umbrella to strike, Shiki knows he can't outrun him, so instead, he charges straight at Naido. Naido thinks Shiki has lost his mind, setting up a wall of blood spikes to block him. He anticipates that Shiki will either dodge to the side, leap over, or retreat, standard options against an impenetrable wall. As expected, Shiki jumps over the spikes, but what Naido didn't predict is that, midair, Shiki forms a gun from his blood and fires point blank at Naido's head. Though impressed that Shiki landed a hit, Naido remains unharmed. The bullet wasn't strong enough. Still, he's shocked that Shiki managed to control his blood, though he suspects it might have been a fluke since Shiki looks ready to go berserk again, preparing his ultimate attack to finish things. Naido is stunned when Shiki suppresses his berserk state and stays in control. Curious, Naido asks how he managed it. Shiki explains that he saw Naido use his ring to cut his finger and manifest his blood umbrella, so he copied the idea. In his mind, he just screamed, "Give me a gun," and his arm transformed. It sounds absurd to Naido, but he can't deny it worked. Typically, Oni must keep their emotions tightly in check to avoid going berserk, especially hotheads like Shiki. But Shiki is different. Rather than suppressing his emotions, he seemingly beat them into submission, making his berserk mode work for him. Crude, but undeniably effective. Shiki then pledges to grow strong enough to kill the man who murdered his father, promising to do whatever it takes if Naido will teach him. Seeing his sincerity, Naido still declines, reminding Shiki that what he just did was a dead man's gamble with no backup plan if things went wrong. That kind of recklessness is unacceptable. However, Naido admits that Shiki isn't entirely hopeless, so he changes his mind. He cancels Shiki's execution and agrees to take him in as his student. He doesn't elaborate on what changed his mind, but he recognizes Shiki's potential and refuses to let it go to waste. He explains that they are on Anigashima Island, home to Ritsu Academy, a military school built specifically for Oni. The academy's purpose is to train Oni to fight against the Mamoru agency. While Naido continues explaining, Shiki is more distracted by the fact that he's on an island, prompting Naido to poke him in the face for asking irrelevant questions mid-explanation. Naido reveals that he is the homeroom teacher at the academy. From now on, he'll be responsible for training Shiki and the other students. Shiki will have to live, train, and fight constantly to one day face the Momotaro agents. Overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information, Shiki can barely process it all. But in the end, it doesn't matter to him. He'll do whatever it takes to get stronger and avenge his father. A little while later, Naido leads Shiki to the changing room to put on his new school uniform. Shiki feels strange. He never thought he'd wear a school uniform again after being expelled from his old school. Naido informs him that there are other students in his class, but warns that Shiki is by far the weakest among them, so he'd better not pick any fights. While changing, Shiki asks where his father is. Naido explains that they've kept his father's body in the morgue, and that arranging the funeral is Shiki's responsibility. This reminder dampens Shiki's mood, but Naido advises him not to dwell on regrets. Instead, he should focus on getting stronger, so he never has to feel such regret again. Not wanting to waste any more time, Naido skates off, telling Shiki that he only has 15 seconds to get to class, or he'll be late. Shiki protests that it's not fair, but with no other option, he runs as fast as he can. They eventually reach the classroom door. As Shiki contemplates the coolest way to introduce himself, Naido, fed up with the delay, kicks him inside. Shiki crashes face first onto the floor, giving himself a nosebleed. Looking up, Shiki asks the first person he sees for a tissue. The student, Jin Kaugasaki, coldly tells him to shut up and sit down. Shiki is immediately irritated and gets in Jin's face, ready to argue. Besides Jin, there are other students in the class. Kina Sazanami, Juji Yujirub, Homer Bayabugora, and Ikari Mamamiya. But right now, Shiki only cares about settling things with Jin. Before a fight can start, both Shiki and Jin suddenly find themselves seated next to each other, with Naido standing behind them. Neither of them notice Naido move. They're both paralyzed with fear. Shiki complains about sitting next to someone like Jin, but Naido couldn't care less about their personal disputes. Moving on, Naido announces that today's activity is a game of tag. Shiki is confused, thinking it must be a code word, but no, it's just a literal game of tag. The students must make their way through the forest to the goal, but Naido will be chasing them. Anyone he catches will be expelled on the spot. To make things fair, Naido promises not to use his blood powers, although the students can use theirs as much as they want. However, if anyone goes berserk, he'll be forced to use his blood too, and things won't end well for them. Jin asks what happens if someone accidentally kills Naido during the game. Naido replies that if anyone can kill him, they'll immediately graduate and be assigned to any unit they desire, though he warns that it won't be easy. The class is visibly excited by this reward. Shiki still feels hesitant. He's not used to such extreme situations, but he isn't about to back down. He declares that he's ready, telling Naido to bring it on. Naido then announces an additional rule and pulls out 2 small balls, still smaller than his ego. He tells the students that to pass this test, they must have a ball with them when they reach the academy. Without missing a beat, he hurls the balls into the restricted area. Naturally, the students assume they'll have to fight over them like it's dodgeball meets the Hunger Games. But Naido clarifies, they'll be split into teams. Team 1, Shiki, Jin, and the timid, pink-haired girl Homer. Team 2, the delinquent Dickety and the classic nerd Juji. Team 3, the perpetually anxious Rikuro and the confident queen herself, Kina. Naido tells the teams he'll be entering the restricted zone 15 minutes after them to give them a head start. Seems fair-ish. But then Shiki, never one to read the room, blurts out that he doesn't want to team up with the masked weirdo. A+ teamwork energy. Naido, ever the patient rollerblading menace, informs Shiki that refusal to work as a team means immediate expulsion. So Shiki, with the enthusiasm of a cat being dunked in water, takes his words back. Then Homer politely introduces herself to Shiki. Having never experienced actual female interaction, he instantly catches feelings like a rookie in a rom-com. Trying to sound cool, he tells her he'll protect her. Homer, visibly flustered, says there's no need for heroics. She just doesn't want to be a burden. She then approaches Jin to introduce herself, but he's deep in edgy loner mode and completely ignores her. Homer, now spiraling, apologizes for simply existing. Cue tears. Shiki yells at Jin for hurting her feelings, quickly turning to console Homer with, "Don't ruin your cute face by crying." Then it's right back to trash-talking Jin, who snaps back with some discount alpha male one-liner, probably cribbed from some tape podcast. Naido, tired of the drama, tells them to get moving already. Jin and Shiki dart into the forest, with Hammer trailing behind, doing her best to keep up, despite clearly being emotionally whiplashed. Inside the forest, Jin starts ninja leaping through the trees like he's auditioning for Naruto, daydreaming about how killing Naido would get him a diploma and a fast pass to the front lines where he can face his greatest enemy. But his brooding is cut short when Shiki sneak attacks him. Jin, unimpressed, demands to know what Shiki's problem is. Shiki says he's going to prove he's stronger. Jin is all in. He removes his mask, revealing deep scars around his mouth. Shiki, trying not to look grossed out, taunts him, saying only weaklings show off their battle damage. Unbothered, Jin pulls off his gloves, revealing stitch-covered hands. He tears one open, letting his blood ooze out and shape into spinning saw blades. Shiki, stunned, internally panics that the creator of Chainsaw Man might sue them. Jin tells Shiki to scram if he's scared, but Shiki, thinking of his father's murder, refuses. Jin pauses for a second, sensing something deeper, then gets all ominous and declares that they'll never understand each other. Shiki replies that he doesn't want to understand him and bites his thumb to activate his blood weapon. But nothing happens. His arm just sits there like an uncooperative noodle. Desperate, he picks up a stick, because why not, and goes in swinging caveman style. Spoiler, it's wildly ineffective. Jin is casually cutting down trees like he's clearing land for a new mall. Meanwhile, Hammer is wandering through the forest, wondering where the boys went when she hears trees crashing down. Her anxiety surges and she spirals again, feeling like she doesn't belong in this brutal world. But then she remembers, Shiki called her cute. With a tiny spark of motivation, she sets off to find him, unaware that she's literally just a few steps away from one of the test balls. Typical anime luck. Back with the boys, Shiki is trying to punch Jin with all he's got. Jin, not even needing his chainsaws, is easily wiping the floor with him. It's a one-sided beatdown, and Shiki's fists might as well be wet noodles. Shiki can't stop wondering how the heck Jin is controlling his blood powers so smoothly. But then it clicks. Jin's ability is different. His chainsaw blood technique isn't like Shiki's tornadoes at all. Lost in thought, Shiki drops his guard, and Jin lands a solid punch that knocks him flat. Oof. Frustrated but still conscious, Shiki watches as Jin turns to walk away, telling him to go cry in a corner, like the loser he is. But just as the edgy chainsaw boy takes a few steps, Shiki groans and gets back up, declaring that the fight isn't over yet. Annoyed, Jin casually sends a blood chainsaw flying at him, and right at that moment, Hammer strolls in, blissfully unaware that she's about to get turned into sashimi. Her tragically bad survival instincts kick in, or rather, don't, and she steps right into the line of fire. Shiki, panicking like a dad chasing a toddler near a busy road, manages to push Homer out of the way just in time, getting slightly wounded himself in the process. He stands over her protectively and demands that Jin apologize. But Jin, always the sunshine of the group, coldly replies that if she had died from such a weak attack, it would have been her own fault. Yikes. Then Hammer starts mumbling, "I'm sorry," like she's reciting an anxious mantra. Shiki tries to comfort her, telling her it wasn't her fault, but suddenly she starts bleeding from her nose, like a lot. The blood begins to swirl, forming into a giant humanoid figure, and both Shiki and Jin freeze. They stare in horror, basically thinking, what in the name of Attack on Titan is this? Homer, barely coherent, pleads with them to run. Her giant blood construct, nicknamed by the fandom as Female Titan's dramatic cousin, smashes the ground with a powerful attack. Shiki narrowly avoids it, while Jin runs toward it like it insulted his playlist and starts slashing away. Unfortunately, his chainsaws barely tickle the massive creature. Shiki yells to Homer, asking if she can stop it, but she tearfully says she can't. She collapses from blood loss, and Shiki grabs her, planning to carry her to safety until he realizes something strange. The Titan is protecting her. Even Jin notices, it's like Homer's blood has a will of its own. Suddenly, the Titan projectile vomits blood, like it just took a shot of ghost pepper sauce. Jin hides behind a rock, but Shiki, ever the punching bag of fate, takes the full blast. Then Homer, still crying, begs the Titan to stop calling her big sister. Cue Shiki's confusion. Wait, what? She tells him to run again, but Shiki refuses. He doesn't want anyone else dying in front of him, not after what happened to his father. Then the Titan lets out a roar, so loud it sends shockwaves through the entire forest. Students far away feel it, and even Naido, perched on a tree branch, watches in interest. He decides to let Shiki and Jin deal with this mess for now. Back at the scene, Shiki injures himself, trying to activate his powers, but nothing happens. The Titan swings at him, he dodges, but she picks up rocks and hurls them like a baseball pitcher on steroids. One hits him hard, flinging him back. Worse than the pain, though, is the humiliation. He's never felt this useless before. He's supposed to be a fighter, not a crash test dummy. Frustrated, Shiki tears up, but don't call it crying. Jin shows up and roasts him, telling him to go home if he's gonna cry like a little. "I'm sweating from my eyes," Shiki yells back. Ignoring the drama, Jin slices open his wounds and creates 2 different chainsaw types on each arm, like some kind of violent Swiss army knife. Despite the pain from earlier attacks, he's determined to win. Watching from afar, Naido is impressed. He explains, probably to no one in particular, that Oni blood can't take any form a user imagines, but those forms are shaped by their trauma, preferences, and personal experiences. So basically, blood therapy is canon now. Back in battle, Jin uses a circular chainsaw to climb the Titan, like he's reenacting that one scene from Levi Ackerman vs. Beast Titan. He goes for the neck, but the Titan sacrifices an arm to block it. Meanwhile, Shiki, still on the ground, is yelling at his hand like it just failed a math test. Why can't he form a weapon? Then it hits him. Jin makes cutting tools because he likes cutting stuff. Hammer's Titan clearly has an emotional link to her. And what does Shiki like? Guns. Like, a lot. Possibly more than the average American. Suddenly, Shiki figures it out. Electric light bulb. Back in the chaos, Jin is struggling. The Titan roars again, bursting his eardrums. Dazed and bleeding, he's about to go down when Shiki steps up. He's now holding a grenade launcher made of his own blood. Totally not overcompensating. Naido watches with awe, impressed that Shiki finally unlocked his power. Shiki, excited like a kid with a new toy, dodges the Titan's next attack and fires. The grenade hits dead on, and boom, the Titan explodes in a glorious, gory mess. Both Jin and Naido are left stunned. Shiki Ichino's, the expelled delinquent with a heart of gold, just blew up a kaiju with a blood blaster. Not bad for a guy who was getting thrashed with a stick 20 minutes ago.